Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to No Experience Required, Gaining Clarity for a Career in Cybersecurity with the lovely Candace Williams. Little about myself. I am the Product Marketing Manager for Cyber Defense Curriculum here at SANS, which also includes the New to Cyber courses and New to Cyber kind of initiative that we have started in the last couple of years. I get to do lots of cool and fun things like talk to people that have made really awesome resources like Candace did. I get to talk to people who have pivoted into this career from something totally and completely unrelated and made a huge success out of it. We are here to help you figure out what that right path is for you. As we'll discuss, there's not one path into cyber. Once you decide you want to be in cyber, that opens up a huge world of where you want to go, which can be very scary, but also really exciting. And so that's why we're here today. So I'll kick it over to the lovely Jen.
Hi. So I'm so excited to talk about Candace, and I have all these notes that I wrote to introduce her. I actually forgot I was going to talk about myself. So I am Jennifer Santiago. I work on content for all of the summits here at SANS, which include some of our technical ones like digital forensics and pen testing, Hackfest, but also I get to do the stuff that I really love, like talk about New to Cyber and also work on our neurodiversity and cybersecurity summit. And actually, Emily and I co-hosted our New to Cyber Summit earlier this year in March, which was focused entirely on reskilling. And Candace is going to talk about so much of that. So I'm going to tell you about Candace, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. So Candace started out serving in the US Air Force, where she was stationed abroad in the UK and South Korea before coming back home and starting her career at Raytheon, where she has been very happily since 2008 in a variety of technical roles. And she's currently the Associate Director of Cybersecurity Leadership there. She holds an MBA from the University of Arizona and a CISO certification from no less than Carnegie Mellon, along with certs from CompTIA and ISACA. She's done volunteer work with Empower Cyber, WISIS, Women in Defense, among other organizations. She does public speaking. She is a prolific content creator on LinkedIn, which is how we got to know each other. And she posted about this book. And I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly the book that I wish we had had back in March for our New to Cyber Summit reskilling. And then I got the book and I read it. And I'm like, not only do I wish I'd had this book in March, I wish I had written this book, because it really is just a handy, wonderful guidebook and touches on so many areas besides just cyber. We're going to get into personality assessments and all kinds of things. But with that, hopefully you are sufficiently overwhelmed hearing all of your accomplishments. And there's more that I didn't even get to, but welcome, Candace.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll share a little bit more about myself. So that's all the professional stuff. But on the personal side, I'm also a mom of twin girls. I'm a wife and I'm in Florida. So I don't know anyone else who's out there in sunny Florida, but I'm born and raised here. Love it. And yeah, that's the personal side of Candace outside of work. So yeah, we'll kick off, Jennifer.
Well, first, I want to ask, you could have easily just sat on your butt and ate bonbons and not written this book, not taken the time and the resources and everything that it took to write this. Why was it so important for you to write this guidebook for other people?
So I would honestly say initially it was selfish. And here's why I say that, right? So I would get questions often like in my inbox and I would answer them initially. And I'm like giving these long, spiels and, helping. And after a while I said, well, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. So how do I help myself not be repetitive and actually have a resource to kind of share, to say what I would say in my voice, right? So that's what started it. I said, let me get these questions. Let me kind of itemize it and figure out, if I were new to this field, if I was just starting, what makes the most sense, right? And one of the frequent questions was what do I do? Like, what do I do? I have this, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I'm Candace. I just met you over, LinkedIn or whatever the medium was. And so I said, well, there has to be a way. If they know themselves, figure out what they want to do and all this stuff, then they'll have an awesome start. So it was selfish initially, but it turned out to be something that, I'm hoping, right, is helpful to everyone who kind of picks it up, to be clear on what they're doing in the space, because that's where you get the most bang for your buck in my mind. So that's why it was selfish initially.
I love that you said you wanted the resource to be in your voice, because I totally do get your voice from the book. It's like having somebody at work that you look up to and are friendly with, that you can go and ask for advice. Like, it feels very warm and personal. And I have a whole ream of questions for you. I'm not kidding, but I want everybody watching to know that they can also use the Q&A function, and we'll try to get to your questions for Candace as well. But like I said, we talk a lot about reskilling, or people who are trying to get into the industry for the first time. And one of the things that you talk about was starting out as a help desk tech. And I feel like that's somewhat of an overlooked pathway into cyber. So can you talk a little bit about that for people who are just brand new?
So I would say the military may be a little bit different, because I was in a certain AFSC, which is like your specialty code. So I was a 3 Charlie, which doesn't even exist anymore. So I told you how long ago that was. But a 3 Charlie was computer comms. And so there were a lot of different disciplines that were under what a 3 Charlie would do. And so my initial role was the help desk. I was taking calls, putting in remedy tickets, unlocking accounts, changing passwords. Like, that was my initial role. And then I went into small computer support, where break fix, removing hard drives, re-imaging machines, installing drivers, whatever that needed to be done. But that was my foundation. I didn't know that it would necessarily help me in information assurance, which was what cybersecurity was called, but it did, right? It gave me a basic understanding of computers, and that was the AFSC in general, right? So in the military, when you're in basic training and tech school, you get all the preliminary information about computers, different disciplines. It covers the gamut. It just so happened I landed in the help desk and small computers. But to your point, it did help. When I got into IA, I understood, of course, what systems were, how it functioned. And my role at that point was to assess when I got into information assurance. But help desk, understanding the systems, and small computer support, it did help me. But it was more an assignment versus me knowing this is going to be the next best step. But now, hindsight, right, we know that it can be a good first step into getting into cyber, to understand that technical foundation, right? So.
Emily, you got a question ready? Or you want me to go? I got more.
If you've got another follow-up, I just like listening to Candace talk about her life.
Well, another thing that I saw in your book, so we talk about this a lot. So I am what I call cyber adjacent. Like, I am not a technical person. I don't have technical cybersecurity skills, but through my work at SANS and other positions before this, I work with cybersecurity professionals all the time. And so I think that, there's this big misperception that you have to be deeply technical. And one of the things that's really attractive, I think, is the area of GRC. And you mentioned that in your book, so I'm hoping you can explain what GRC stands for, what it is, what those kinds of roles are like.
Yeah, so GRC is governance, risk, and compliance. And it's more, here's what I say, right? In this discipline, you need to understand technology at some level, right? You can't just not know what a network is, know what a firewall, you have to understand it at some level. But it's when you get into policies and procedures and actually assessing risk, like what certain vulnerabilities pose this type of risk to the system. And then what do you do to mitigate it, right? How do you track it? How do you make sure the system stays operational? I know we're familiar with the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability, but it's really just about making sure that system is compliant to standards and risks are mitigated when it comes to GRC. And there's different disciplines, right, of GRC. You have auditors, right? You have the managers. I'm in the aerospace and defense industry, so it's a little bit different to me because it's still aligned with DoD. And so I sometimes think the different frameworks and different overarching like CSAs or organizations who kind of manage DoD versus or public versus private, DoD versus this. Sometimes it's a little bit different. So in my role, I started out from cradle to grave in this GRC space within Raytheon as an ISO, which is an Information System Security Officer. And I was in charge of auditing systems. That's when we didn't have SIEM tools. I was in Windows in the event logs with these little scripts, auditing the system weekly. I interface with users, make sure they had the right accesses. I interface with program management to make sure that they gave the permissions to do things on the system because they're the owners, right? And then I made sure everybody was adhering to the policies as they use the system. So in the defense space, and I'll just say this and I'll pause. In the defense space, when you have a system, depending on the classification of it, you have to make sure it meets a certain standard and it has to be approved that way. And so part of our responsibility was to make sure it maintained that compliance level that it was approved at, so that we, again, mitigated risks, didn't have any issues, and it was good. So I was an ISO and then a tech lead, verifying the systems, supporting the ISOs. And then I moved into the ISM role where I was actually certifying the systems and submitting it for an ATO, and then on and on and on. But that's the role I had in GRC. It was more auditing, compliance, again, risk management, and supporting the team. So once I got to the ISM role, I was managing a team. And then as Raytheon kind of transformed, I moved into different roles and had a different level of responsibility across the business. But that's GRC within this space. And it differs. It depends on maybe the company, the industry, right? Aerospace and defense may be different than the healthcare industry and how they implement things, but it's all, you have a framework. It's just a different name for the framework, but it's what you adhere to for this discipline specifically. So it helps to give you a guidepost in my mind to have a framework and something to follow. So
I'm going to back us up a little bit.
Yeah.
So Emily and I both geeked out over the format of your book because it's really this slow build where you start with the very basic building blocks of who you are, and then you find out what kind of role you want to see yourself in. And I see, Ashtar, your question that you put in, thank you, about so many entry-level jobs in cyber require years of experience. How do you get your foot in the door with cyber? We're going to get to all of that. But according to Candace and all the great stuff she lays out in her book, that's a question for a ways down the road still. So can you just kind of talk about how you laid it out and your 5 whys and some of this really great foundational stuff you have in the book?
Yeah, so the 5 whys and the what's and all that came from really wanting to make sure people knew why they were getting in the field. So when I would get questions previously about wanting to get into cyber, I would ask them why, like, what do you want to do and why? And they wouldn't know, right? They just said, I want to get in cybersecurity. And I was like, well, yeah, that's great. But there are a lot of things that happen in this field, different disciplines beyond GRC, where if you're not sure why you're here and really what you want to do, you're going to jump around. You're not going to be happy. And just because you have a nice paycheck, however that is for you, you're not going to be fulfilled in this industry. And in my mind, what we do in terms of protecting data and really being vigilant to keep that part of our lives safe, right? It's important. You need to really enjoy it and know why you're doing it, or you're just going to be like a placeholder and you may let things kind of slip by and not really pay attention and have the right type of intention behind the work that you do. So that was why I started out with the why. Like, why are you even here? Is this really what you want to do? Are you trying to get paid? You just want to kind of, say that you're in cyber and it's kind of sexy now. So, what do you want? So that was first, it was the why. And then the what was, okay, well, now you know why, and you're going to figure out who you are. We talked about the DISC assessment. And I could share a story about that too, where I kind of got that piece from. But when you figure out why you're doing it, then what, right? Because if I'll share my type, right? So are we going to get to that? I don't want to jump ahead of myself if I share my type.
I would love to talk about the DISC assessment because
Okay.
I just discovered it yesterday. So maybe you can tell people what it stands for and what it is and how they can find it.
So the DISC assessment is on truity.com, and it's one of many assessments. And don't get me to trying to say the acronyms because I always forget. I have to pull it up. I'm the worst. There's so many acronyms in my field. I'm the worst at remembering all of them. But it was the why, and then it was the who you are. And it's important just because for me, my primary type was influence, right? And the secondary was supportive or steadiness. They changed the name a couple of times, but my personality is being collaborative. I'm a team player. I love working with other people. I like following rules to a point, right? I like being creative. Like all these things are a part of my personality. And if I were someone who's sitting at a computer coding, I would pull my hair out. I wouldn't be able to do it, right? There are certain things I need for me to be able to thrive. And one of them is people. And a lot of what I do in GRC is collaborative. I'm always talking to people. We're connecting with programs across different functions, right? I'm able to give new ideas and be creative on solutions. There's so many things that play into my personality with what I do. And so knowing that is important because we spend 9 to 10 hours of our day at work. And if we don't like what we do, you're going to be miserable. Money only goes so far, right? It's important, yes. But once you get to a certain level, I forgot that study, it's no longer that much of a differentiator, right? In your quality of life. So really loving what you do and enjoying it was important. So that was the why and the who you are, which led to the what you're going to do, and really looking at that and assessing it. And doing your best. It's not perfect. It's not a science, right? It's an art to just saying, okay, here's why, here's who I am, here's all these roles. And I like these, they sound good, it resonates, it fits. So let's pick this and kind of move forward. That way you at least started that preliminary discovery of yourself. So you're not just doing something just to do it. I worked at McDonald's when I was 14. I hated that. It was horrible, right? I'm not doing that again, right? You have to know, what works. So the other, just to share, because I have it pulled up, I had to bring it back up for myself. The other 3, so I was influence and steadiness. And then, let me see, there were, let me find it. I hope I didn't close my window.
I was influenced too, which is funny because I think that makes sense. I think that's why we vibe with each other. And another thing that it said, when you find out influence is your type, it means that you're kind of somebody who likes to hype up others, make things fun, find ways to motivate your team, which I think is a perfect tie-in with this book that you've written and the way you approached the information you shared.
So I got the other 3. It was dominance, conscientiousness, and steadiness. So, and those for sure aren't me, right? Conscientiousness is structure, organization, data-driven, dominance, focused. I guess that can't be inspirational, independent. And steadiness was patience, persistence, thoughtfulness, right? So mine was influence, like Jennifer said, that's what it is, right? And I thrive best with people. So when you do your assessment and kind of get that laid flat, you'll just kind of see things will align. I actually learned about DISC through Empower. So Tia actually has an Empower You program that she runs, and a part of that was that particular assessment. And I've done several more in the past, but when I saw that one, I was like, it's a really good one to use when it comes to work. It was specific to that. So that's what kind of drove me to really look deeper into it and take it along with the 50,000 other personality assessments I've done. But they all, when I read them, they all align in some way. It's really weird. I've done several.
Will you say more about Tia for people who don't know who Tia is and where they can find her, because she is also an incredible resource.
Yeah, Tia Hopkins, she's everywhere. So she actually founded Empower Cybersecurity, and she works at Easton Tire as the Chief Resilience Officer. So she's phenomenal. I mean, if you haven't bumped into Tia, I'm not sure how you missed her in this industry. So she was phenomenal, and initially helping me kind of understand just in general how to kind of communicate when it comes to being on social media. She sat with me when I started this whole process and gave her time, gave her energy. She's warm, open. So, I mean, she's very instrumental in just cybersecurity in general. If you see her, you hear her, you're inspired 100%. So I love Tia. So yeah, that's it.
Tia's great. She did a talk 2 years ago at the New to Cyber Summit about what you can expect a day in the life for a cybersecurity professional to look like, and having maybe some taking your rose-colored glasses off to really understand you as a person and what kind of role would be good for you. Because she was saying, if you can't handle stress, being a SOC analyst is probably not the place for you. Which you talk about in your book a little bit too. Personality types and strengths and weaknesses and things like that can really help you guide where you want to go. But I have a question. So some people are better than others at being self-aware of, these are my strengths and these are the things I've done in previous roles that could translate to a role in cyber. So if you're maybe not as self-aware, what would you recommend somebody do, or who to ask, or things like that to get a little more awareness around it if they can't come up with it themselves?
So I would hope you have somebody you trust that's close enough to you, because I've asked, when I think I'm a certain way, I have 2 sisters, so I would ask them like, hey, do you think that I'm actually, kind or influential, whatever, right? I'd ask them, and hopefully they're honest. So it takes someone else who you trust to give you that outside opinion. If you don't have that voice, then you got to get it, right? Connect with someone, find a mentor, someone who you can kind of start building rapport with to actually help you see yourself. Because sometimes you can't see it on your own, but you got to get someone else in there to kind of help you see yourself. So I say a mentor or a coach if you don't have a sister, or like I do, a friend or someone else who can be honest with you, right? It's the honesty part. Don't tell me I'm, so great and so creative, like, whatever. And I get in front of someone, they're like, yeah, no, you're not. What was that show? The singing show, where they get on there and you're like, no one told you couldn't sing. Remember that? Like, was it American Idol? Like, no one told you before you got on this stage that you couldn't sing. So you have no friends, no loved ones. So it's kind of that same idea. Someone needs to tell you, you're not quite that friendly person to be in front of a room trying to influence, right? You're not the person to inspire. You're probably the person that can, support, help, right? Be a partner. So hopefully you have somebody.
So to follow up on Emily's point, so I think that often when we take these assessments, maybe it's even less about not having the self-awareness, but more about having the weird humility. Like, when I took the assessment, it was like, your type is influence. You influence people at work. And I was like, no, I don't do that. So there's that. And so when we talk about people who are brand new to the industry, whether it's because they're just getting out of school or just getting into the workforce, or because they're changing from something totally different, transferable skills are the biggest thing we need to talk about. How you can convey your experience, your skill sets when you have literally no experience, as the title of your book says. So I highlighted this one quote on page 20 of your book where you said, we often downplay what we've done to be humble or not appear overly boastful, or because someone told us it wasn't enough. And I see that all the time, especially with women who underplay their achievements, particularly women of color who have, not historically had a seat at the table. And also for people who are brand new, who think, we had somebody who attended our March event who had been working as a dog groomer. And I love that. We need all kinds of people to come in and make us better in cyber. But of course, if you've done something like that, you're going to be like, well, I worked in a hair salon. I don't have transferable skills. I think you can call BS on that and talk about how you convey your transferable skills.
Yeah, so I think you have to look at least soft skills when it comes to just leading or managing or reviewing, right? There's certain things that don't require any sort of technicality to it. So if I'm a dog groomer and you had a business, I'm pretty sure you had financial records or something you had to audit and review. I'm pretty sure someone came to you and said, I have this kind of dog, that kind of dog, this kind of dog, and you had to put something together to do their hair, right? There's something you had to do to find a solution for that thing. So when I say don't downplay, it's not to say I'm just a dog groomer, I'm just a music teacher, or I'm just this. It's okay, well, what did you do in that particular role that required critical thinking, that required you to pay attention to detail, that required you to collaborate or lead, right? Thinking it from that vantage point, not just that I was this thing, but how did you use that thing to run your business, lead a team, right? So it's just shifting that perspective to what you did to take ownership of that role or in that role. So I've seen a lot of hairstylists and teachers, music teachers, people might even say been in the military, right? Who've figured out what those things were. And not to bring AI into it, but I did that at one point. I asked, what are some skills that a teacher can do in cybersecurity? And I got a list. I Googled it. What are some things that someone who was a hairstylist can do, who own their own business can do in cyber? And so you can get that initial list and start looking at what you've done too. And again, some basic ones are leading, being able to, again, pay attention to detail, looking at things from a solution-oriented perspective, right? Because cyber is about finding solutions and figuring things out, and identifying problems to be able to correct it before someone else can expose that vulnerability. So there are things that didn't require me to say, oh, I understand how to code. No, but I can look and see that that doesn't quite align, all right, that isn't quite right, or I can rally a team and provide support. So I think it's just really owning what you did, and it doesn't matter, right? There isn't anything better than, it's just what you've done in your experience that can lend to what you can do in cyber. So just don't take it for granted.
In here,
Yeah.
you have this whole list of transferable
Yeah.
stuff. And the example you used was somebody who was working in retail. So can you talk a little bit about how you positioned the person who was working at Hobby Lobby?
Yeah, so I think I had the audit example where they're inventorying for the organization, right? So I think in one example I said, well, yeah, I inventoried for the year, and that was really it. Well, what does that really mean, right? Quantify what you did. Don't just let that go, because if I know that you've inventoried 3,000 items and you were able to chronologically put them in this order and put them in a database and know that database was functioning and know the data was correct, I know that you, again, pay attention to detail, that you are actually focused, and you can actually look at that type of data at that scale, because 3,000 items is a lot to audit and put that data into a database, right? And so it's being able to quantify what you're doing and say, here's how it impacted the organization, right? What did that do when I inventoried those items at Hobby Lobby, right? And so it seems small, but nobody is gonna boost you up or give you the marquee to say I am phenomenal like you would, and only you know what you did. So that's the example I gave, and that was why, because again, think I worked at Hobby Lobby, who cares? Well, what'd you do, right? Did you manage a team? Were you a team lead at Hobby Lobby, right? Did you do anything else that could have added value that you can easily use in this space? So that's my biggest thing for everybody. Do not downplay what you've done, or let anyone else tell you that it's not enough, because who are they? It's your career. You mark your path. You create these things for yourself, and you're gonna build your brand to showcase how that actually mattered and how it actually plays into who you are and how you can be an asset to a company. So you write that story, no one else tells you. So that's where that comes from. The example was to try and take a basic role and just say, no, it's more than just inventorying, right? So.
Love that. Throughout the book, you have all of these worksheets to kind of help the reader build up to a plan of, this is what I want to do. Are these short-term plans of 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? I think a lot of people coming into the industry say, I want to be a pen tester. And they think the first job they're going to get out of the gate is pen tester, which is not the case most of the time, or probably like 99% of the time. So what is that kind of realistic timeline that you think of for, I want to become a pen tester, and how long is that going to take? How many roles are in between the first one and finally reaching that goal? And then a little caveat to that is, like, you could be wrong, right? You can start your journey and decide that was totally not what you wanted to do. Do you have any recommendations for kind of pivoting your plan once you're 3 years down the road and decided maybe that's not quite the path for you?
Yeah, so a part of the book, when it came to actually figuring out what you want to do, was to say, okay, we're going to do a quick gap analysis. Here's what I want to do, and then here's the things I have to do to get there, right? And what those iterative steps look like. So there may be a time where, when you look for that initial pen tester job, because you don't have experience, you have to do something else. But I'm not a pen tester, so I'm not going to try and pretend to know what those steps look like. But the point of saying is you find someone who is a pen tester, right? You find someone who has done it to kind of help you build those steps to understand what that path looks like. I gave a resource. It was the NICS website, and on that website, it's like a workforce, let's say, module that kind of helps you break down all these 52 roles that were outlined in the NIST, and they have these alternative titles for positions, and they kind of give you different pathways. as a resource to help you kind of say, well, if I start as a pen tester, are there really entry level pen testers? Maybe, right? If there aren't, then what is that pre-step? So that's a part of the exercise, is to really kind of get you to think through that, and to look at those resources, because oftentimes we want someone else to give us an answer. And sometimes that's okay, right? Sometimes it's okay because it's totally foreign to you, but other times it's just a matter of you taking that initiative to kind of dig in there so you understand it for yourself. Because I can tell you anything. Don't listen to Candace. I can say whatever to you, but you saying, all right, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to research it. And now I have this little, idea of what I think it should be. Now let me go to this person who I think can help me and confirm what I've understood and what I've dug into, right? So I think that's really the key to the exercise, is you're working to get an understanding for yourself, and you're working to be able to ask valuable questions to confirm what you're discovering, not to tell you what to do, right? Because it's your journey. So that's the first one when it comes to the gaps and what they should do and how they reach to that next level. And then pivoting, I always say you can pivot if you want to, but I say give it time. So if you take the time to really say at the forefront, I'm doing what I want to do, cool. And when you get into it, you realize it's not what you thought. There's nothing wrong with pivoting. I think it's easier to pivot when you're in something than not knowing initially. So I know what I want to do. I'm in cyber, got my first job. It's great. Nah, I don't quite like GRC. It's boring. I would rather be in a SOC, being excited, whatever. And you can. I think the same steps you take to understand what it takes. Like if I'm in GRC, what is it going to take to pivot into being a SOC analyst? I'm pretty sure more skills and more things will have aligned now, right? Because you've been doing the work. But it's the same idea. What you want to do next, what certs or what tasks or what things do you need to do to make sure you can pivot to that next level? But don't be afraid. A lot of people have lived many of lives, is what I call it. I've met a lot of people who've been artists and business owners and hairstylists, like in the same lifetime, right? So you're not stuck in anything. It just takes the assessing piece and really knowing yourself and keeping track of it is another part of it. So I hope that answers it. I feel like I went rambling, but I hope it answers it.
That is such a good answer, and it gets to the main thing that I want to cover. But I did want to say two things. We're more than halfway through our time already, and I do want to get to some of the attendee questions. And also, one of us, Emily or I, will drop a link in here because we do have, of course, it's SANS. We have a feedback form for you. Because we'd like to know not only if you found this valuable, any comments you want to share with Candace, but also what kind of stuff you'd like to see from SANS New to Cyber in the future. And Emily has 5 copies of Candace's ebook to give away. So if you do complete our eval form and leave your contact information, we'll have a random drawing and 5 people will get a copy of the book. And the main thing I loved about the book is the way that it takes you step by step through this journey of self-discovery. Because you just said, answering Emily's question, sometimes you just want someone to tell you what to do. And I see that so often with people who are new to cyber, like, how do I do this exact thing for myself? And like you said, you can't tell them. I can't tell them. They've got to go through this whole process of figuring out their skills, their disposition, how they're going to fit in a high stress or low stress, a very extroverted role or an introverted role. And so I think a lot of times people get frustrated because they don't know how to figure that stuff out. And I mean, this is a tool for you right here, Candace's book. But you say in here, when you reach out for support, you must be clear about what you'd like guidance on. It would be best if you ask specific questions that are open-ended and manageable. So if you can talk a little bit more about the best way to approach somebody in the industry for help, instead of just saying, I want to get into cyber, what do I do? What would you like somebody to come to you with?
So I'd first say this, right? We're all still humans, okay? No one's a machine, right? We all want to feel like you want to get to know me as a person, not just what I can do for you, right? So first try and actually connect with someone, whether it's engaging with their posts or whatever else, and just seeing how someone's doing, right? Not just busting out the gate, I want to get in cyber, you help me. Like, no one owes anyone anything, right? We do these things because we want to share. So I say always come with that tone first, please, right? And then I would say just specific questions. So if you do want to be in GRC. So, hey, Candace, I've been in cybersecurity, or I've been pushing and starting my career in cybersecurity and decided on GRC. I've, taken this certification, and I've taken my Security Plus, and now, what can possibly be next to kind of help me land that first role. So now I know you've gone to school, you want to be in GRC, you've taken the certification, and there is a next step that I can advise you on. There's something I can say to that, right? Versus, I want to get in cyber, I took my master's in cyber, what do I do now? Well, that's super open-ended, right? I have no idea, because I don't even know how many disciplines to kind of jump into, but saying, what you've done so far, what you want to actually get into. And if I'm the right person to even help with that, because I don't know about pen testing. I'm not a red team or purple blue team, or I'm not that person, right? So can I really help you? So knowing who to go to with those questions as well is important. But already know, have those answers, unless it's someone who you're working with as a mentor or coach who's helping you get to the point where your what. But if you're reaching out to someone random, really understand what you're doing and what you need to ask them so they can answer, because it's overwhelming. Even for me, when I get these paragraphs of support and I'm like, I want to help, but I don't really know. And I'd hate for you to take what I say and run with it. And it really it wasn't even what you needed to hear from me, just based on general information. So just be clear on what you want to do and ask. Say hi first, and try to connect a little bit, and then ask those specific questions, because it can help, right? That one answer can kind of help pivot you, but be specific and be kind.
So you mentioned certs, and so I wanted to ask Nicholas's question here in the chat. So certs are the age-old question. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I think certifications are great, but so there's the whole certification versus experience versus where do you invest your resources. Somebody else asked about balancing how you prepare and study for certs when you also have family responsibilities. So Nicholas said he's thinking about taking a boot camp for cybersecurity. It would be a 6-month-long commitment, and then he'll get a certification. So does that give him a better boost versus starting out in a help desk position? Is the boot camp, is the cert, is it worth the time and the cost financially and emotionally? So just kind of, if people have limited resources, as we all do, especially people who are not yet working in cybersecurity and don't have employer backing, what's the right way to allocate those resources to something like a boot camp versus working your way up through a job?
So I think it depends on you and your time. So if you have the time to take a boot camp, take it just to get the fundamentals. It's not required though. So nothing is necessarily required until it is. So if you're just taking a bunch of certifications just because you think it's going to help you and you're not sure, then to me, that's a waste of time. But if you said, I'm taking this initial boot camp to get this foundational knowledge to then build on it, to figure out what I want to do or where I want to go, that makes more sense to me than just taking it just to take it. And oftentimes that happens. So if you do take it and you have the time, you have the bandwidth, and you know why you're taking it, don't just take it to take it, then I would say do it. That can be just as helpful as starting out working in a help desk, right? Because certain jobs will pay for certification. So that can be an avenue as well if you don't have the funding. Some organizations have educational benefits and you can get certifications as long as it aligns with the role. I know Raytheon does that. They have educational benefits. You get a certain amount per year to go towards certs. So I think that could be a way, if I don't have the money, I don't have the time, but I need to work, I need to, feed my family or what have you. So I want to start out at the help desk. See what benefits the company has before you get there. That's a part of it too. Knowing the company you want to work for and the culture and what they offer, so you can see how that benefits you. Because yes, we work for companies, but there has to be a reciprocity in that relationship, right? So if I work for a company, what can I get from it as well, right? I know we get paychecks, but are there other benefits? And that's one of them. So it all depends. If you do want to start working now and have some experience, it could be the help desk, and then using that company to take those certifications. So I think I kind of beat that one, but it depends truly. But they're both options. And if the cert is free as well. So I know there are a lot of free certifications out there, boot camps out there that are free, that you could take just to kind of get the understanding, but it takes your time. So time is not free. We don't get that back. So just make sure it's kind of worthwhile.
I have something else I want to talk about, but Jarrett just asked a really great question. So they said, once you get your certification, what can you do to get relevant experience prior to getting your first job? What are those things that you can do that will give you some kind of experience to put on your resume? Maybe they're free, maybe they're not, but what are those
Yeah.
things you can do to have some kind of cyber experience, so that you don't just come with those soft skills, which are super important, but
Yeah.
get a little bit of a leg up as well.
So I've seen a lot of different resumes, and one thing I saw, I think it was earlier this year, it was pretty cool. I was like, oh, this made sense to me. It actually kind of gave me an idea of what they worked on. They didn't have necessarily relevant experience, but what they did is they kind of broke down their courses, and they took a few courses and they highlighted what they learned in that course. So I've seen that before, which was, again, helpful to me as someone reviewing a resume to actually put in for an interview. And I actually interviewed that person because I saw that. But you can break down the courses you took and what you did in that course. If you're doing projects, I know we talk about cyber projects all the time. You can say in this environment, in this particular project, I did this thing, and explain what you did and how you did it, how you resolved it, whatever that looks like. But that's really the way. It's either expounding on what you learned in those boot camps from those courses, or sharing and being clear on how you solve problems in your projects and what you did in those particular projects. So those are two ways, without having any experience at all, and wanting to kind of showcase, here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm learning, here's where I am. And hopefully it helps. And one other thing that I used to always kind of frown on, but I kind of just felt it was antiquated, that now I no longer do, because there's so many applicants looking to get into these entry-level roles. Cover letters. I used to be like, well, who does cover letters anymore? Like, why? What's the point? And that was my stance. And then I saw a few start coming through, and I'm like, this really helped me kind of see, what they're looking to do. It wasn't long. It wasn't, arduous, but it was just a nice little paragraph of why I want to get in cyber. Here's what I've been learning. Here's what I've been doing. I'd be open to this opportunity. And it caught my attention. So it used to be cover letters all the time, then they kind of waned away. And now that we're in this kind of, I don't say error, but it was helpful. So those are some ways you can present your case with a cover letter, share who you are, and then your education and projects, putting it on your resume. I would say that helped.
That's great. I think cover letters are a great way to showcase your personality.
Yeah.
Whereas resume is kind of the, the checkoff list of your skills and things. There's a reason we have interviews, right? Like, just because you have the perfect resume to fit that job description, if you're a total jerk, they're not going to hire you, or you could maybe be lacking some of the skills that they're looking for, but you seem very approachable and teachable. That goes a really long way. Today I saw a post on LinkedIn that said, stop hiring the resume, start hiring the attitude, which really spoke to me. You can find someone who doesn't know a thing about, the SOC, but is willing to learn and eager to learn. You can teach any kind of technical skill to someone if you're willing to put in that work and time with them. But as the marketer, I would be remiss to not talk about your whole chapter on branding, which I think was super great, but can be a little scary for people, especially I'm a more reserved, introverted person, and have, through the help of Jen and other people at SANS that really championed me, have pushed me to be a little more out there. But what would you say to someone who says, I don't have anything unique to say, or shouldn't I leave that to the experts who, know this field better than I do? What would you say to someone who has that kind of attitude?
As aligned with my influence, I would encourage them to not take that stance, right? Everybody has something to say. So although my personality type is influence, I definitely feel nervous and whatever else when I post and share, especially starting out. I would post and run. I post and I was like, I'm out of here. I'm not looking at anything, shut my phone down. I don't want to see. and you get used to it, right? If you're coming from a place where you really want to help, or you're really just trying to showcase and share, you're not going to feel so, what's the word? I guess pressed to need to see a certain result, because you're really just trying to showcase it. And if you also understand, when you post it, it's a part of your online resume, or your proof that, you know, you're doing what you're doing and you are who you are and you're showing your personality. It's a lot of things. So building your brand and your voice online can have a lot of positive impacts, because it exposes you to people that can actually help you and offer you a job, or, you know, provide opportunities to you. So just post and run. If you have to post and shut your phone down until like the next day, and then go look at it. It happens. And if you really, you know, are that nervous about it, that have someone take your phone, but you got to do it. You got to use your voice and speak out. Because that's just, I don't know what else to say about that. You have to, unless you are into networking in person. But your online brand it's a big deal. How you present yourself, the voice you put out there, and doing that in the most, you know, open, professional manner that you can. It's important. It shows what you can do. Even more so, we talk about your resume, saying what you can do and maybe not having that experience. Well, I saw one young lady, I can't think of her name right now, but she would share her full projects on LinkedIn and go through like the frameworks and kind of share what she did in a very clear, and she laid it out really well. It was aesthetically pleasing, but she was showing her work and she had a lot of engagement. She was brand new to the field, but she was putting it out there, and she ended up landing her first role, not necessarily because of that, but it was a part of her branding and what she was sharing on LinkedIn. So you just have to kind of try and get out of it. Just try your best. And if you can't get out of it, just do it. Just do it and run. I still have to do stuff and run now. When I posted that book, I almost had a whole anxiety attack, guys. So I'm still a whole grown person in this career field for 20 some odd years. And when you do anything new, it's going to scare you. But there's a book I read years ago. It was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It is honestly, when you say that, it's that simple. And if I get scared, I'll say it, just feel the fear and you got to do it. Because if you don't, your voice, what you have to offer, all those things get stuck with you, and you never know who you're going to touch. Whether it's one person, two people, 5, 57 who are on the Zoom, right? So you just got to do it. That's it. Do it. It's the influence.
So you mentioned networking in person. And we always have this whole conundrum of like, how do you get experience when you have no experience to get somebody to take you seriously in this field? So Alfredo asks a great question here. He says, do you have tips for finding cybersecurity organizations to volunteer with to gain experience, which is an outstanding pathway, I think. Do you have any tips on identifying the right kinds of orgs to reach out to?
I don't know who will let you volunteer. I'm not sure. But I would say this. So sometimes if you find a list of organizations in your community, right? Small businesses where it's just, maybe a small 5 to 10 person org, maybe nothing huge. And ask them, right? Ask them or offer your services to kind of say, hey, would you mind if I came in and helped you with this? And maybe it's a family friend, maybe not, maybe it's someone you know, but that may be a way, right? If it's a small business and normally small businesses don't have the budget for a security team and those sorts of things. So it may be just connecting and pitching to those organizations. I'm new to cyber, but here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm doing in cybersecurity. I wondered if I could, volunteer to help support you in this way, right? And have some sort of, plan or some sort of, I want to say pitch to make it sound formal, but find some way to offer that service to them and see if they would allow you to volunteer. But I'd say more a small business in my mind. It makes sense to kind of approach versus, like, I don't know, like a Raytheon or a Lockheed or, something like that. So that may be the way to volunteer.
That's a great angle, because I wasn't even thinking like that. I was thinking more like the kind of industry organizations, which is also a good pathway, something like Black Girls Hack or the Cybersecurity Gatebreakers Foundation or RISIS Cyber. There's lots of groups that are doing this kind of stuff who are reaching out to other people who are trying to be new to cyber. So you can teach and learn at the same time and serve the community. But I think, Candace, your point about, maybe you go to your local animal shelter and you say, I'm a cybersecurity student. important and I'd love to help. I'd love to look at your systems. I'd love to look at your password policy or something like that. And, you know, they probably have no resources financially to devote to cybersecurity. So that's a great way to get
And you
into
can share what you did. I went to this boot camp. I got certified by whoever, you know,
Yeah.
SANS. I got these certifications and, you know, here's what I can do. Here's what I can offer. And I mean,
Yeah.
I would. I'd be like, okay, sure. Come on
Yeah.
in, but
That's
too.
smart. Or if they have an IT person who has some security duties, maybe they would let you shadow them
Partner.
too.
Yeah, partner with them. And start small. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a big organization. You doing cybersecurity work does not mean it has to be a Fortune 500 or whatever, the certification body. It could be, like you just said, your local animal shelter. It could be, right? They need to keep data secure too. So,
That's a great take.
Another thing we've heard is people volunteering for like cybersecurity conferences. You know, B-sides or a big one like Black Hat, they need people to, you know, what's the correct word for that now? Sit at a table and hand out the, you know, badges and things like that. Which sounds kind of mundane, but you are there for free because you're volunteering, and then you get to meet all of the people coming in, and that's a great way to network in a way that you probably wouldn't get otherwise too.
Yeah, WESIS, which is Women in Cybersecurity, has a huge annual conference. They need dozens, if not hundreds of volunteers.
Yes.
And they've got lots of great programs. So by volunteering, you're going to get access to those conference sessions. You're going to meet people. It's definitely a foot in the door where you're going to get to talk to people that you would not otherwise have access to. So that's a really good point.
It's kind of
and I would say get involved in your community locally, right? Find out what organizations are there. And I'm sure there are, whether large or small, just figure it out, go to Eventbrite, Meetup, right? And see what other, even if it's IT, right? IT adjacent, and just go and show up and tell them what you're doing. And you never know where that'll kind of lead you. So be a part of your community locally too. And then also, you know, what Jen and Emily shared. So for sure.
So we're coming close to the end of our time, and this has all been really good advice. And I firmly believe that if people work through the process that you lay out in the book and do the worksheets, there are worksheets, y'all, like actual roadmaps for you to use. I really think that you will get to a place where you have much more clarity on what your cybersecurity journey should look like. However, real talk now. Almost at the end, let's get real. And I know you're one person, you're sharing your perspective. You don't know the answers to every problem in the workforce, but so what about the people? And there is one person in particular who is on this webcast. I won't call her out, but she's going to know I'm talking about her. So she has gone through one of the SANS academies. She has certs. She has professional experience with transferable skills. She has a fantastic personality, great soft skills. I met her on a Zoom and I was immediately impressed with her and invited her to come to a summit. And she has done all the right things. Like she has done everything you would advise her to do and knows what she's looking for and knows her strengths and weaknesses, and still is not getting any traction with her job search. And I've heard versions of that from lots of other people. So what's going on? And if people are just sitting here and being like, everything Candace says is so smart, but I did that and still no one's calling me back. What's happening?
So I saw this video last week. It was, I feel like it was Olivia Rose. I feel like that was her name. And I hope it's right, because if not, I feel bad. But the point of the video was that there aren't any entry-level jobs, which, and I know the reason she said it in her video, but I don't think that that's true, right? They're still there, but there are a lot of people who are coming in entry level. And so the time it takes now to land a job may be a bit longer than 6 months or a year. It could take time. And that's something that you got to assess and say, do I have, a year to really continue working this and, networking and looking at organizations, having my list of orgs that I would want to work for and connecting with them and attending a bit, like, do I have that time? Because I don't think, at least from what I'm seeing and hearing, along with what you're saying, Jennifer, is it's not coming around quickly, right? Sometimes it's taking people a year and a half. I sat with someone, it was like May, June, we were at the Tampa Club, and she was sharing one of her friends had the experience, had the certs. It took him almost 2 years to land his first cybersecurity specific role. And so that can be sobering, right? I've gotten this education, I've taken these certs, I spent this money, and it's going to still take me time to get a role now, because a lot of people are, coming into the field. And to the point of one of the video, it talked about our economy, right? It's shrinking. So there aren't as many open jobs. There's been layoffs. There's all kinds of things impacting where we are now. So that was really kind of good to hear. But it may be, especially where we are now, that you're not going to start out with a cyber specific role out the gate. It may take time. And just accepting that, continue to do those right things. Like, don't stop networking with the organizations you want to work with, and with the people who are in the field you want to work with. Don't stop it, because it takes a little bit longer. You just have to be persistent, and still keep doing those things. So I would say to anybody, getting in and wanting to take the jump, don't quit your job tomorrow and say, I'm about to get into cyber. Let me get this cert and go get these degrees, and I'm about to get a job like ASAP. No, like, really say, okay, here's my plan. I have a job now. Can I take 2 years to really do these things to transition, and be thoughtful about it? But don't be discouraged, because it just may take more time. But that doesn't mean you're not going to land your role. It just may take time. So that's my answer. Doing the right things doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. But it all builds up. So what these, yeah. Yeah, so keep your fingers crossed. And it could be that too. Sometimes it is just opportunity. You find the right person, there's an opening, and you slide right in and you get it, right? Sometimes it is that way, unfortunately, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just the opportunity comes when it comes. I was sharing this with someone else, because they asked me, Candace, how did you move up in your career? Like, what did you do? And I just said, whenever I thought I wanted to do something, I got what I needed to get before the opportunity came. So like, if I knew I wanted to be, in ISM at the time, I went in, I was like, well, what certifications? Google really wasn't it? Well, it was still a thing. I'm not that old. But I would look it up and say, okay, well, what certifications fit this role, or whatever it was, and I would get it. And I didn't need it, but I knew that it was the next step for that thing, right? So being prepared for the opportunity is not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean it has to come tomorrow, but being prepared for it just means when it arrives, there are no excuses, no excuses to say, I can't get this. I got the cert, I got this, I have this. So now I can step into the opportunity. So hopefully that helps, because I know how, I've been getting a lot of that, Jennifer, and people have been saying it. And some people said, it was a week or so ago, one guy was in my comments and he said, well, cyber's not for us. This isn't for us anymore. And I was like, oh no, like, don't take that stance, right? It is still for you. It just may take longer. But he was completely discouraged. And you can hear it in his writing. So just be realistic, right? And we're going to look at the big picture and just say, this is how long I'm willing to invest in this thing. And just don't give up on that, because you don't know where your opportunity comes from. So, and is she present online too? Make sure you're online and you're showing up, right? And you're still connecting. Don't stop. So do not stop.
Well done.
That's it. That's what I'm saying.
Needs everyone who wants to be in it.
Yes,
for sure. Unfortunately, we are at the end of our hour. Candace, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great discussion. Your book is awesome. I'm glad you posted and ran, and Jen saw it. It really worked out so nicely for us. So as a reminder, I put the eval link in the chat. It is sansurl.com/N2C-survey. Please fill that out. We love to hear from people about how you felt about this session, and anything that you think would be valuable in the future. We have lots of ideas of what we think you might want, but it's always best to hear from the community, and really know that, a certain resource or a conversation with somebody is really what you're looking for. And if you fill that out, you also will be entered to win a free copy of Candace's book. So it's a win-win-win all around for sure on that one. Another exciting thing, we have solidified the date of next year's New to Cyber Summit. It is going to be April 4th. It's a one-day free virtual summit. We have just gotten the date, so we don't have any particulars on speakers or anything like that, but you can expect to see more conversations like this and really helpful tactical, applicable kinds of things that you can take back with you and hopefully get that job down the road, however long that may be, hopefully quickly, but as we said, sometimes it takes a little bit longer and you just have to have the patience, but there's room for you in cybersecurity. We need each and every one of you and your unique backgrounds for sure. And then lastly, you can follow New to Cyber on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and we are also on Instagram for updates and things like that. Hopefully we have another one of these soon.
And hilarious memes. Emily is the meme queen on Instagram. She kills it.
That's my creative outlet, is the New to Cyber Instagram. So go check that out. Jen, do you have anything to say?
No, it's been a pleasure, Candace. And please do
Thank
fill out your
you.
emails because we want to know, we want to share whatever you'd like us to share with Candace for feedback, but also
Please.
what you want to see more of in the future. These are for you, going to be free virtual resources. So let us know what you need and what you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.